The United Kingdom is facing severe economic challenges. Even though there was a time when you would call it the economic powerhouse of the world, it's quite unfortunate that the country is now grappling with stagnant growth, labor market issues, and declining living standards due to the rising inflation. The country is a complete mess. And the interesting thing is that the UK's troubles are not new. They have been brewing for an extended period. I mean, of course the pandemic, Brexit, and recent political upheavals have exacerbated the situation. But the root cause of Britain's economic woes actually run much deeper. The service sector is the backbone of the UK economy, accounting for 81% of total UK economic output and 83% of employment by December 2023. The significant impact of the service sector is not only strong in the UK, it bears a substantial impact on the international scene too. In finance, for example, the City of London remains one of the world's top financial centers. In the educational sector, prestigious universities like Oxford and Cambridge attract hundreds of thousands of foreign students yearly, contributing billions to the economy. We also have telecommunications, transportation, leisure services, and other key service industries driving the UK's economic engine globally. But if the UK is such a service juggernaut, what could be the problem exactly? Well, if the economy is the engine of a country, investment is its fuel. But the UK's tank is running on empty, and that's harming economic growth, driving inequality, and making it harder to reach goals like zero gas emissions for climate change and energy security. For several decades now, gross capital formation has been steadily declining in Britain, lagging far behind other major economies like Germany and the United States. Look at these stats. The overall investment rate in the UK fell from a high of around 23% of GDP in the late 1980s to around 17% from 2000 onwards. Investment rates in typical G7 countries, on the other hand, remain largely in the range of 20 to 25%, as this image shows. This investment drought translates into fewer new companies being created, fewer factories being built, and less money being poured into productivity-enhancing machinery and technologies. This dearth of investment is a major Achilles heel for the UK's economic prospects, because it means while millions of migrants come into the UK yearly and younger Britons are growing into that age when they need jobs, new jobs are hardly being created for them. Now, several factors have contributed to this investment crisis. I will name 4 of them briefly in this video before we look into possible solutions. Number 1. Following the 2008 financial crisis, the government slashed public investment spending as a cost-cutting measure. Critical infrastructure projects were shelved, and funding for research and development took a major hit. This withdrawal in public investment had a ripple effect on private sector investment. To put that in layman's terms, when the government spends less, businesses also get scared to invest their money because they're not sure if it's safe. Alongside that was a reduction in funding for research and development, which hindered innovation and technological advancement, the 2 things you would call crucial drivers of productivity and competitiveness. Number 2. The legal and political uncertainty surrounding Brexit also deters many companies from making long-term bets on the UK. With the future trading relationship with the EU unclear, many companies adopted a wait-and-see approach, deferring major investment decisions. The risk of potential disruptions to supply chains and access to skilled labor further dampened investment appetite, particularly in sectors heavily integrated with the European market. Number 3. Constantly shifting regulations and environmental targets have also made businesses weary of investing heavily. The world wants to achieve zero emissions, and that's to drive clean technology investment. But in the short term, they risk hurting productivity for many established firms, especially the firms in emissions-intensive sectors. They have had to divert resources toward compliance, eat into profit margins, and in some cases, shelve expansion plans as they grapple with the transition costs. Number 4. Corporate governance issues have made the investment problem even worse. Many British companies spread out governance among many different investors. This means no one is firmly in charge of overseeing the company executives. Without this oversight, the managers tend to focus more on short-term results rather than long-term investments because their bonuses and incentives are usually tied to the company's performance over the next few quarters. It's like a manager thinking, why should I spend billions upgrading our factories now? I'll be gone in 5 years anyway. I'd rather make quick cost cuts to look good this year and get my bonus. This UK's prolonged investment slump has severely hurt how productive British companies and workers are compared to other rich countries like France, Germany, and the United States. Since the 2008 financial crisis, the productivity gap between the UK and these other nations has more than doubled. It's gotten way bigger. You can really see the effects of this poor productivity in how little British workers' wages have grown. For a full 15 years of economic troubles, real wages in the UK have basically stayed the same as they were back in 2005. An entire generation of 9 million British people have never experienced a time when their pay went up consistently year after year. For regular households, this means over a decade of financial stress as their income buys less and less. With wages stuck in place for so long, families have much less purchasing power than they used to. They can afford fewer nice things and have to cut back on spending. While other countries raced ahead, the UK has spun its wheels without making any meaningful productivity gains to raise living standards. It's a troubling trend that is squeezing millions of British households financially. However, there are potential solutions that could help get Britain's economy back into gear. Given the UK's strengths lie in the services sector, one obvious avenue is pursuing more comprehensive free trade agreements aimed at boosting services exports. Up until now, trade deals have primarily focused on reducing barriers for goods like manufactured products and commodities. But services, an area where British firms excel, remain an underexplored opportunity. Striking new agreements that provide greater market access for UK service providers in key markets like the European Union, United States, and Asia could unlock significant economic growth potential. However, there are significant hindrances to this increased market access. Post-Brexit, the UK has lost the automatic right of access to the single market for financial services. So, the likelihood of UK service providers gaining increased market access largely depends on the success of ongoing and future trade negotiations. With its world-class universities, financial hubs, and professional services firms, Britain is well positioned to capitalize on increased services trade. They could benefit, for example, by attracting more international students to its universities and offering financial services to clients worldwide. Britain can generate revenue and create jobs. Additionally, by exporting its expertise in areas like consulting and legal services, Britain can boost economic growth and enhance its global reputation as a leading provider of high-quality services. Of course, negotiating such trade pacts will be politically challenging. But for an economy in desperate need of opportunities, enhancing services exports through freer trade represents a logical way forward. While boosting services exports could provide a welcome economic boost, the UK also needs to address the root cause of its problems, the chronic investment drought. For too long, British companies have skimped on investing in new equipment, facilities, and technologies that improve productivity over the long term. Instead, many firms are fixated on short-term profits and cost-cutting. To incentivize businesses to think longer term, the government could reform tax policies to favor companies that reinvest their earnings into productive investments rather than just returning cash to shareholders. But for this to work, policymakers may also need to tackle some of the structural issues holding back investment, like corporate governance problems. Spreading ownership more could help fix this. In other words, greater representation of workers and long-term investors on company boards could counterbalance the excessive focus on short-term profits that plague many UK firms. Former Prime Minister Theresa May proposed putting worker representatives on corporate boards to hold managers more accountable for long-term decision-making. Empowering committed shareholders to have more oversight should deter excessive short-termism. Additionally, the UK could look to role models like the Nordic countries and Singapore for inspiration. Singapore has positioned itself as a global leader in innovation and productivity by simply providing robust support for businesses to embrace new technologies and upskill their workforce. They incentivize companies to invest in training programs and technological advancements through an initiative called Skills Future. As a result, Singaporean businesses are better equipped to adapt to technological disruptions and drive sustainable economic growth. Similarly, the Nordic countries' emphasis on investment-oriented policies has yielded remarkable results in terms of savings and investment rates. By prioritizing long-term economic stability over short-term consumption, these nations have cultivated a culture of fiscal responsibility and forward-thinking investment strategies. This approach has enabled them to weather economic downturns more effectively and maintain robust growth trajectories. Now, while no single solution can fix Britain's economic woes, a multifaceted approach to tackling the underlying issues could pave the way for a renaissance in productivity, wages, and overall competitiveness. Overcoming these challenges will not be easy, but the solutions proposed could provide a way forward. Of course, implementing such reforms will require political will and coordinated effort, but the potential benefits to economic revival are substantial. Ultimately, revitalizing Britain's economic fortunes is a collective responsibility. What are your thoughts on the issues plaguing the UK economy and the proposed remedies? The road ahead may be daunting, but with the right vision, policies, and societal commitment, Britain could, once again, reassert its economic might and reclaim its place as a global powerhouse.